Hey, everybody. Welcome to Phreology Friday. I am Aaron Tomlinson, and he is.
I am Derrick Day. And welcome to Phreology Friday, y'all.
I had a senior moment, Derek.
You had a Biden moment.
I know.
Let's go,
That's
Brandon.
what they're going to start calling it,
A Brandon moment.
a Brandon moment. I like that.
I want to talk about that too because there was a Brandon reference last night.
There was. There was. I don't, and it didn't get any airtime as far as I can tell.
I was shocked. I was shocked, Aaron.
Dude.
But before we get started, we got to talk about what's in the glass tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wasting away in Margaritaville here. So I got a good old margarita.
A salute to Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. But for me, I'm doing the mule again. Why? Because I haven't moved this bottle of vodka from my desk. so it's just it was a matter of convenience. You know, the lime juice was still in my fridge and the vodka was here, and I had one Reed's ginger beer left.
Nice.
So here we go.
All right.
Here we go.
So you want me to set up the topic?
Yeah, man, go ahead. Let's take it up.
So we're going to talk about American politics, and you and I talked, about the show and popularity of the show and the shit show that is American politics. Off air, I don't know, weeks ago, months ago, whatever it was, and we said, we don't want to alienate parts of our audience. We don't want to prevent people from receiving good content because they disagree with us politically. And it's such a volatile political environment in America. And then we texted a little bit last night watching the, what was that? The presidential debate.
Yeah.
That SNL skit that passed for a presidential debate.
Hey, Aaron, that hesitation was like a senior moment.
I know. It was a Brandon moment.
A Brandon moment. We're going to get to that.
So I just want to set this up by saying we don't want to piss anybody off. We don't want to alienate anybody. I think people that have watched the show know kind of where we lean politically and how we think. And my goal for this show is not to persuade anybody. If you haven't made up your mind where you're at, I don't know what to tell you. The fact that there's still undecided voters out there, whatever. And it is an election year and things get more heated as we get closer to the election. And the 2020 election was crazy, right?
Yeah, that was nice.
And so if our viewers look closely, our topic is not the presidential election or the presidential debate. It's just American politics in general.
Yep.
And where we're at as a society. And I don't think I'm outing you at all. I hope I'm not. But I text you, I said, you're watching the debate, and you're like, yep, we're fucked.
I mean, dude. Okay, let me just say this, because I know you're not finished setting things up.
No, go ahead.
But I just want to say this, that, Malcolm X once said, he said this in the wake of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He said, the chickens have come home to roost. And this was a statement that was so profound that not only did it piss off white Americans, but it pissed off some black Americans too. And Elijah Muhammad famously kicked Malcolm X out of the Nation of Islam for saying that. Right? So, but what we saw last night were the American chickens coming home to roost. Because this, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends of all ages, this is your fault. And by your fault, I mean our fault.
Right.
Right? Because we have allowed this to happen. I mean, you had a shit show of a near senile, barely animated corpse versus what the personification of a human anus would look like if it was ambulatory. This is what we have. These are our choices of political candidates, and this is like the culture of racism, sexism, nationalism, things that we unresolved issues that this country didn't deal with communism, fascism, with eugenics, and I can just go on and on and on.
Sure.
But what happened last night was a crystallization of all that is America.
Yeah.
So back to you, Aaron.
Yeah. So before, and I don't know, maybe some viewers didn't see the debate, but I don't want people to think that we're just going with. I'm going to frame it this way. I don't want, when it comes to the debate, I don't want people to think we're just going with right-wing talking points about Joe Biden having dementia or declining or in decline or whatever. It was on display,
right,
for the entire world. And I mean, at one point, I honestly, genuinely, looking at the president, and I say this respectfully, I really do, but I was waiting for a moment where he would start drooling or just totally lose his shit, right? Just totally, like the way he was looking at Trump, I was just waiting for him to totally lose it. And that's not good. And to give people some context by comparison, I want to bring up another firebrand of a name, Anthony Fauci.
Okay.
People can love him or hate him. They can think he was a saint or he's a devil. I don't care about that. Mm-hmm. But the man is the same age as Biden, roughly.
Yeah.
And he just sat through a congressional hearing and held his own.
Total command of his thoughts.
He is going on a book tour of his book that he wrote. Very articulate, very quick in his responses, same age.
Yep.
Robert Kraft. Now, I haven't seen a talking tour of Robert Kraft, but he runs the Patriots still. Yep. Same age. Warren Buffett.
Same age.
10 years older.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's 93.
And George Bush the elder, George H.W. Bush, this guy was crystal clear until he checked out.
Yeah. So here's what I think is a disservice. And then here's where I think we get to one of the roots, not the root, but one of the roots of the problems with American politics. This is a serious issue. This is a serious issue because let's say if you're in the Democratic Party and you elect Biden to a second term, he's only going to get worse over the next 4 years. It's not like it's going to improve. These things don't improve, They don't get better. And we're more worried about losing to Donald Trump than the competency of the person or the qualifications of the person that we're putting into office, right? And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, at the end of the day, running for any political office, but running for president in this case, is a job interview, right? You're being hired by the American people to do a job.
Yep.
But qualifications don't really matter. Vetting the candidate doesn't really matter because the way you get this job is by winning a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And what we saw last night is not going to win a popularity contest. So what that means to me is the only way that if Biden stays on the ticket, the only way he gets elected is the anti-Trump vote. And think about this, that people are willing to watch that last night and settle for that because they're so afraid and worried about what would happen if the other guy gets into office. Mm-hmm. That, and it's like the elephant in the room, sort of, you know what I mean? But we're just, I have a feeling, and I might be wrong, but I have a feeling that the attitude is, let's just let this pass. It's a moment in time. It's a snapshot. We'll get out there with surrogates. We'll get out there with advertising, and we'll just forge ahead. And I think that's political malpractice.
That's that's a term. I mean, I don't know. This may be original. Political malpractice. That may be the statement of the year.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing is we are allowing the worst of us to represent us.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who is feeble.
Right.
Let's just.
It's not his fault. It's not his fault. We all age, and
it's aging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Donald Trump, who is a liar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and let me say this: I was really disappointed with CNN because they didn't fact check anything. They just let him say what he said and didn't fact check anything. I think that when it comes to how they handled the debate, the CNN did a piss poor job.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I think, like, CNN has suffered from this perceived bias that when people talk about the left-wing media, CNN is the poster child, or has been the poster child or has been the whipping boy for the right wing about left-wing, bias in the media. So the new management comes into CNN and says, okay, we're going to take a hard turn to the right. And by taking a hard turn to the right, they're essentially giving the right a hall pass.
Totally.
Not checking them on anything. But let me get back to what you were saying. Okay, political malpractice, because I want to really double click on that, because if when you talk about malpractice, if you're a professional that has an ethical responsibility to a client, for example, attorneys have this responsibility, physicians have this responsibility, consultants have this responsibility, and when these people do something that is not in the interest of the client, then the result is malpractice. Okay, so we talk about political malpractice. Now let's talk about who are the culprits, right? Because easily the candidates themselves. They're not talking about anything that's meaningful to the American people. In fact, it's totally counterintuitive. It's totally incongruent. And so now you have the candidates themselves that are participating in malpractice, in political malpractice. But then let's reverse engineer that a step. And how did they get there? They got there because they were nominated by their respective parties. Now, were they nominated? The conventions have not happened yet. So theoretically, they haven't been nominated. We call them the presumptive nominees. But the parties themselves knew what they were fielding.
Right.
This is a case of eyes wide open.
Right.
You knew, Democrat Party, Republican Party, you knew what the fuck you were doing when you put these two aged blowhards on the stage. Okay? So now we have political malpractice on the part of the parties. But let's reverse engineer that a step further. How did the parties put them in there? We the people. We the people. So we have two things going on. We're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're committing suicide by 1,000 cuts. Now, to go back to something you had said earlier, like, don't think we're just talking Republican talking points, because we're not. I want to say, for the record, Aaron, I'm going to speak for you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that on this show, we're equal opportunity abusers.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's no bias here. Well, let me say this. I do have a bias, and it's this. I think that unless this country takes a hard turn to the left, I mean, where we are actually erring on the side of socialism, until we get to that point, this country is going to be fucked, because you have the Republicans, and God bless the Republicans, because they have done a really good job of putting their message out there, promoting their narrative, prosecuting their agenda. They've done a really good job, and they've done such a good job that since Bill Clinton, Democrats are essentially thinking that they have to look and act like Republicans in order to get elected. Instead of just saying, like, I love Bernie Sanders. I love Bernie Sanders. But I'm going to get into why Bernie Sanders, was never going to be president in a little bit. But Bernie Sanders represented a marked turn to the left. And by all aspects of critical thinking and logic, he should have gotten the nomination and he should be president. But we've talked on this show about groupthink and the perils of that. And I think that the current groupthink, the societal groupthink, will not permit a Barry. I'm thinking Barry Sanders.
You had a Brandon moment.
I had a Brandon moment, and we're gonna get to that. I promise you, we're gonna get to Brandon. Stay tuned. But we basically, if we don't do something to stem this tide of the right turn, then basically, I mean, think about this. Think about it like your car. That if your car is got to pull to the right, you have to take it in and get that alignment corrected. And basically what that means is changing the camber and caster of the wheels to the left somewhat, so that the car will track straight. And that's what we need. We're right now we're veering hard to the right, and everything that we're doing, when you have a car that's pulling to the right, it naturally leans that way. And so what happens is if you wind up being in a situation where evasive action is required, that correction has to be more abrupt than what it should be. And what happens then in the car is you unbalance the set of the car. You unbalance the wheels, you transfer weight incorrectly, and these are how crashes happen. And that's where we're headed. We're headed for a political crash because of political malpractice.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, did you ever think you'd see the day in America where presumably, in my opinion, the candidate that won the debate, and I get this is subjective, and I don't know what the polls say, but in my opinion, the candidate that won the debate actually said, I didn't have sex with a porn star.
He did.
And that's the guy that won.
That's the guy that won the debate. And this is how far we've come, because watch this, right? And Aaron, you should be able to resonate with this because you're from Colorado. And guess what I'm about to talk about?
I don't know.
Gary Hart.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like Gary Hart said, I'm not sleeping around on my wife. Hell, follow me around. And they did. And he was. And that completely derailed it. And Gary Hart was a guy with the most fantastic political future. This guy's tall, he's handsome, great voice, and all of that. The right gray hair around the temples. This guy was president. He was born to be president. And what happened? It was derailed. Chuck Robb, former governor and senator from Virginia. Chuck Robb's another guy, tall, dark, and handsome. He had the pedigree. He was married to Lyndon Johnson's daughter, for Christ's sake. And he's like, he has an affair. And the American people say, oh, we don't want that level of immorality in the White House. No, we don't want that. But here comes Donald Trump, that he did sleep with a porn star. Let's make that clear. That he was married to a softcore porn model. Okay. That there are multiple records of him on Jeffrey Epstein's plane.
Yeah.
And he actually said they have him on tape, for fuck's sake. Grab him by the pussy.
Yeah.
And yet he was president. So I said then that when that didn't get him, when grab him by the pussy didn't get him, You know, when alienating the Gold Star families didn't get him, and he became president. I said then, I said, man, I said, guys, the bar has really been lowered here.
Oh yeah.
You know, and the one thing that I tell people all the time, I say this all the time, that people think that Trump is bad, and Trump is bad. He's absolutely awful. I mean, he's and there and Biden did quote something correctly. Is 140 something political scholars have said that objectively, not subjectively, but objectively, that Trump is the worst president that there has ever been. Now, you got to remember that Trump is in the running with Millard Fillmore. Now, if you know your history, you know that Millard Fillmore was a fuck up of epic proportions. You know, or Warren G. Harding, you know, who was another fuck up of epic proportions. And Trump's got both of these guys beat historically.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have this is where we are. And I'll tell you, if again, I'm going to lean into this this political malpractice thing a lot, because Aaron, I think that you said that was like the mouthful of 2024. You know, that really is it. But the thing is, I just say this and I'll stop talking. That we have learned to do very poorly when it comes to selecting our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look back in history, you know, you had and don't get me wrong, all of these people are flawed. None of these people are perfect, but you know, you had Teddy Roosevelt, you had Calvin Coolidge, you had FDR. I deliberately excluded Herbert Hoover, by the way. You had Harry Truman, you had Eisenhower, you had Kennedy. Oh, and let me talk about Kennedy for a second. I want to stop here for just a quick second.
Sure.
Because Kennedy represented a change in American politics.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because this was the first time style mattered.
Right.
It was substance, you know, because now to be fair, I think that in the last 50 years, last 60 years, I think there are only two presidents that have embodied both style and substance, and they were John F. Kennedy and Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. Let me just say that for the record. But
sure.
But everybody else was like either it was style over substance, and so here we are now in America is this cult of personality. Instead of he who has the best policy winning, it's going to be he who courts the cult the best.
Yeah.
So one time.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Gary Hart, and times are different, right? Because back then it was, you had a newspaper, you had 3 stations that carried national news, you know, at least where I live. Maybe other people had different experience. So you didn't have this constant barrage of 24-hour news stations, multiple 24-hour news stations, social media, YouTube, people like us talking, you know, you know what I mean? And so here's the problem. And to your point, and I was going to say this too, politics should be about policies. It should be about what policies are being enacted to benefit the most people the most without leaving anyone behind. Right.
Yep.
That's the ideal of the American experiment, right?
Yep.
But you had guys last night arguing about their golf handicap and whether or not one could carry their golf clubs without a supercharged golf cart. And this is where I do think, this is why I totally disconnected from the Republican Party and the right as it is now. Because Trump didn't talk at all about policy. He really didn't.
No.
He avoided questions. And when he does talk about it, he talks in very generalized, very vague terms. He never gets down to the specifics. Even in 2020, you know, what's your healthcare plan? Never produced one. There's other examples, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds with that. But there's no policy. I mean, it really is a cult of personality. And here's how I know, Derrick, because if it really was about policy, you can't tell me that these are the only two guys that can effectively lead our country. You can't tell me that there aren't younger, more energetic, more charismatic people in both parties that are more qualified to do the job in terms of policy. Yeah. So if it was about policy, because the bar is on the floor, the bar is on the floor.
That's good, man.
It is, but whoever wins, it was a small step for mankind to get over the candidate because they're so bad, and so they would have cut bait. The right would have cut bait. It's harder for Democrats to cut bait because you have the incumbent.
Yeah.
You think if Biden would have lost in 2020, he'd be the candidate right now?
No.
No way in hell.
No way. Yeah.
But the Republican Party, for whatever reason, didn't cut bait with Trump. So here we are 4 years later with a not new and improved version of both candidates and the same choice, but a much more decompensated version of both candidates and the same choice in the ballot box in November. So while I obviously think there's problems on both sides, I don't think both sides are equal in terms of how they're approaching things. And the right really has this Messiah complex. You know, his base for sure has a Messiah complex with Trump. So he can do no wrong, he can say no wrong, and any narrative that he spins is what's going to be believed. And that's the problem, I think. That's the difference, like between Gary Hart and Donald Trump, is that what matters now is not the substance and not the facts as we read them in the newspaper in an article or see it on, you know, the nightly news at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever. It's who can control the narrative. And well, do your research. Well, you're really doing research where you're researching the actual, getting down to the brass tacks of the actual policies and events and what really happened, the facts? Or are you just researching narratives that develop in you a bias and then stay with the narratives that confirm the bias? You see what I'm saying?
Right. Confirmation bias.
Yeah. But a bias that you didn't even have, not you, but that a person didn't even have until they consumed the narrative 24 hours or, you know, 8 hours a day, whatever, every day on social media, the sites that you watch, the channels that you subscribe to, the news programs that you watch, all that kind of stuff. They feed you the narrative. They don't report the facts. A lot of them don't report the facts. They report the facts, and then all the nightly news shows are commentary about the facts. So we get lost in the aboutisms and lose the facts. And so whoever controls the narrative controls the vote.
Yep.
And the Democrats put a guy up that doesn't even know the narrative, I don't think.
No.
Versus a guy who's a master at controlling the narrative.
Yep, exactly. And so that brings me to a point. I'm going to touch the third rail. I'm going to touch the proverbial tar baby. And I use that term very strategically because race.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the race factor in this.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Barack Obama was elected the first time, you know, there were so many interesting things that had happened. Like, first of all, when the Kennedys gave the Kennedy family gave Obama their endorsement, their collective endorsement, and Ted Kennedy stood up and he said, you know, this is the guy that most represents the ideals inculcated by my brother.
Mm-hmm.
That was powerful. And I really believe, I could be wrong, but I really believe this. This is a hypothesis I have. I think that a lot of well-meaning white people went to the polls in 2008 and said, you know something, I'm going to vote for him because it soothes my conscience. It makes me feel better, but he's not going to win. Mm-hmm. And then they woke up Wednesday morning and it was like, oh, fucking hell. Mm-hmm. He actually got elected. Now, for those of us who are critical thinkers, that's how we felt in 2016. You know, the Wednesday after election. You know, oh fucking hell, he actually won. But let me go back to this for a second, because when Obama won, that was the birth of the Tea Party movement.
Yeah.
And the Tea Party movement, I'll never forget what their rallying cry was. We're going to take our country back. Take our country back. And immediately I'm like, take our country back from whom? Exactly. Who took the country? Mm-hmm. Who hid it? You know, who's holding it hostage? Mm-hmm. You know, why do we have to take our country? I mean, what are we taking it back from? And I was thinking, I said, last time I checked, we're all Americans, irrespective of our color, you know, and there were people who say, hey, this is the beginning of the post-racial society. No, what happened was Condoleezza Rice, of all people, said this, and she said it perfectly. She said that America's birth defect was racism. Mm-hmm. And that wound, that birth defect, was never healed. Now, so let me give you guys a working example. Joaquin Phoenix was born with a cleft lip, hair lip, but his parents saw to it that he had the corrective surgery as a child, so he would grow up having a normal appearance. And Joaquin Phoenix has gone on to become a noteworthy actor, you know, and humanitarian. But would he have done any of these things? Would he have been able to do these things if he went through life with this cleft lip, with this hair lip? No, because that's not the way America is heavily influenced by appearance.
Right.
Appearance matters. It's the cult of personality. And so here we are, we have this birth defect. We've never dealt with it. We never addressed it. And we just said, you know, eventually it'll just go away. You know, if we just live long enough and we all work together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, it'll all be better. But instead, Obama's election said to a whole people, oh shit, what happens if he's just the first of many Negroes to be elected to the presidency? Oh shit, what's going to happen? And you have to look at America through the lens of its retributive self. What do I mean by that? You know, in the Revolutionary War, you know, we'd say, remember Yorktown, and then when the War of 1812, remember Baltimore Harbor, and then we get to the Civil War and we say, remember Gettysburg, and then we get to the Spanish American War, and we say, remember the Maine, and then we say, remember the Alamo, and remember Pearl Harbor, and remember 9/11, and remember. Why? Because after every one of these things happened, there was a immediate retributive action that took place. Now you'll probably say, Aaron, Derrick, where are you going with this? Where are you going? It's that this country has a history of vengeful behavior. And so the thing that I think scared a lot of rural and non-urban white folks was that if you elected a string of these black folks, that they would somehow want to get back at white America for the things that were done to them during slavery. And so we can't have that happen. You can't have that happen. So we got to make sure that we do everything to upend and do, and so that's where you get the birther movement and all this other crap that it came up. But what happened was that Obama turned out to be such a good president.
Yeah.
That when Romney was not a bad guy,
right,
an unintelligent guy. He happened to be a Mormon. I think that was his sin. But the thing is that people reelected Obama because they said, okay, he's good for the country.
Mm-hmm.
But and Obama, God bless him, man. I said this guy could have done a whole lot more for black folks than he did. That's another story. But he said in an interview, hey, I'm the president of all the people. So I can't just single out one group of people because they happen to be my people. I have to govern the whole country. And I give him a lot of credit for that. But people were so turned off by that there were a whole lot of things that they wanted to say, but they couldn't because it wasn't politically correct. It wasn't the sort of thing that you say in polite company.
Mm-hmm.
Along comes Trump. And Trump basically gives all of it. He's writing hall passes by the millions, right? Here, go have at it. Say what you want. You like the N-word? Me too. Go for it, right? And so then you have all of this. So basically, what I'm saying is that there's a whole racial component to this, and the other thing too is that the Democrats were so gun shy by this that they weren't going to nominate another black person because they in their mind, I don't care how good they are, there's no way that they're going to elect them because of the backlash from Obama.
Mm-hmm.
So now this what Trump did is the Band-Aid that was holding the wound together, the wound of racism together. Trump just ripped that fucker off.
Mm.
And then he poured a little salt into it. And that's part of the reason why we are where we are, because when people talk about Democrat versus Republican or liberal versus conservative, what they'll say, well, the liberals just want to give everything away. They just want to give everything away. They want to give all these people all these benefits and all these rights. Which people? Yeah. Who are you afraid of the benefits going to? Because if the benefits are going to people like you should have no problem. But you've bought into this narrative that that black people are the chief recipients of welfare, yeah, and other public aid, that you don't want anything else going that way, when in reality most of the welfare in this country, most of the public assistance goes to white people, whether you look at numbers or as a percentage. It's more. So the whole thing with Biden too is that I think that Biden he pays a lot of lip service to race in America, but he's guilty of a lot of racist shit, like the 1992 crime bill. He's one of the authors of that. You can't, but when it's time to to put someone in, whether it's him or a choice between him and Bernie Sanders, I got it right that time. Let's go, Brandon. But between him and Bernie Sanders, it's like, okay, well, Bernie is just going to give away things to people, so we need to get somebody who's going to represent the interests of the meaty middle a little bit more, and that's where Biden comes from. That's the place where he springs forth from. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing too is that the country generally, they saw Trump and by and large said, hey, enough. So I think that basically a greased pig would have had just as much chance of winning against Trump as Biden did.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to, as you're talking, I'm trying to process and think through what I was thinking back in all those, various moments that you identified. White people going in and voting for Obama, for example, the next day, Trump showing up on the scene, make America great again. And I'm trying to go back to conversations that I was having with people at the time and kind of get inside their heads, kind of remember what was happening, what was going on at that time. Clearly, what you're saying about the birth defect of the nation, quoting the Bronco owner. I had another moment. The former.
Let's go, Brandon. Let's go.
I'm messing with it. Condi Rice. So clearly, Trump shows up on the scene. I guess you could call him blonde. white billionaire, right?
Yep.
Businessman, make America great again. Which begs the question, it's an open-ended, that just lets people reference whatever they want. Like,
yeah, when was America great?
And why is it not great now? See, that's what people didn't get that was slipping in. It's like, I was always raised. I don't believe this now, but I was definitely raised, drilled into me, programmed. America is the greatest country in the world, And so I call them my people because they are my people. To buy into this concept, make America great again.
Fuck, wait a minute, you're not black?
No, last I checked.
Fuck.
No, those are my people, man. It stormed the Capitol. I'm watching the Capitol get stormed, and they got the Jesus saves signs, and yeah, I thought, there's my people. Look what they're doing. Not my proudest moment. But something I think that gets missed, that from my own experience, and it's very anecdotal, very just remembering back and thinking back to when, and this is after Trump, but where it really got on my radar was Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the singing of the national anthem.
Yep.
Now, I'll be honest, because of the way I was raised, I didn't like that. I didn't appreciate that. And I'm going to give myself a caveat. I also didn't understand what he was doing.
Right.
Because all I saw was, hey, this guy's taking a knee during the national anthem. I think he was holding a fist up. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I had no knowledge base to have any context other than that's disrespectful to the flag to try to frame that in. I just didn't. But where I was different than my friends, because they got, I had friends that loved football. If you're from Colorado, dude, it's Broncos country. The Nuggets just won the national championship last year. Yep. Nikola Jokic, he's been MVP 3 out of 5 years or something. Dude, they're the distance between on the major sports talk show in Denver, every evening is a show called Broncos Country Tonight. 365 days a year. So I had friends that were like, I'm never watching NFL games again. And I'm like, what? And so here's how I looked at it. I looked at it like this. Do I like this based on what was my current understanding and everything at the time? No, I don't. Do I understand it? No, clearly I do not. Did not. I do now. Did not. Yeah. But that's what makes America great. See, that's how I framed it. What makes America great is, and I preach this. I remember I preached this, and shit, man, all the shit hit the fan. And I had no idea. I was so naive, dude. I would just get up there and think, this is a message from the Lord, and people are just going to grow, and they're going to be blessed. And I remember saying this. I said, you realize that expression of whatever you want to call it free speech, call it whatever you want to call it, is what makes America great. And it is a clear representation of what I was taught my whole life the flag symbolizes, which is that freedom, right? And people lost their shit. And that's, for me, and I'm speaking anecdotally from my experience growing up in white rural America, being from Pueblo, Colorado. That's like when the lever got pulled out from underneath the boulder and it started rolling downhill. Or that's when the started to happen, that I began to notice it was the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. And then it just escalated from there until we are where we are today on that issue. And we've regressed. No doubt about it. Yep. We've regressed. We have not progressed. As a country, we have regressed.
Yep.
No, I don't know. What's your take? What's your thoughts on that?
No, and I think that we have regressed. I think that we were making forward progress, that we were moving toward a post-racial society, that we were actually learning to, the old Coca-Cola song, "I like to teach the world to sing," blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I thought we were moving toward that, but the thing is that a disease that is untreated will rear itself over and over again, or a wound that's untreated will fester, and that's what racism is. We never dealt with it. So what Kaepernick was doing was protesting against the wanton killing of blacks by police.
Right.
That's a legitimate protest, and it was legitimate for him to use his platform to do that, right?
Huh.
But because we had never been healed from our racist past, that this was seen through a racial lens.
Yeah, for sure.
And so now, and so when you look at football, the NFL population is what, like 66% black, right? The NBA is, NBA is like 80%, right?
Yeah.
And now you got hockey, which is 90% white, but you got enough black people in hockey now that you can count them, right? So
right.
It's people are looking at this like, okay, back in the good old days. And so when we talk about making America great again, and we've talked about this before, I always say that when you look at when was America great, and if you ask the average boomer white guy, he's going to point to a time right around 1957. 1957, because that was before desegregation, that was before the breaking up of Jim Crow laws, before voting rights, before civil rights, before equal rights, all of these things. And it was like, when you listen to the theme song from All in the Family, Carol O'Connor and Gene Stapleton, they sang that song. Those were the days. And if you go back and listen to the lyrics of that song, you're like, holy shit, this is what people actually think. So, the question is, okay, if we're making America great, how about just say MAG, make America great?
Right.
Instead of saying making it great again, because I can make the case that America was never great, and that's a whole nother show. But I want to address something real quick. I want to change gears real quick, because I want to address Brandon because you and I were watching the debate last night, and so Trump responded to something that Biden said. So yeah, this is what Brandon has to say about this, right? Something like that. And I was like, holy fuck. I said, did he just call Joe Biden Brandon? And so I'm texting you. I'm like, holy fuck. Did he just call him Brandon? And you said, LOL, yes.
Well, what was funny about that was that I was like, I was doing the same thing in my head. Did I hear that right? Is that right? And so when you text me that, I was like, yep, he must have. And then I've seen the replay. He did.
And he did. And for those of you who don't know, there was some NASCAR race where the people were ostensibly chanting, let's go. They were ostensibly chanting, fuck Joe Biden, is what they were saying. But the guy who had won the race, his name was Brandon something or the other. And so they were saying, well, the people were saying, let's go Brandon. And so let's go Brandon has become a euphemism for fuck Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So when he calls Joe Biden Brandon, basically he essentially tacitly told Joe Biden to go fuck himself.
Yeah, he did.
And I was like, and as much as I can't stand Donald Trump, I said that was a public speaking masterstroke.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an absolute clinic.
Yeah, it was. Let me take you for a minute back to what you said, what you're saying about like 1957 and Make America Great Again and stuff like that. Like your grasp on history, not just politics, but history specifically, for just a common person. You're just a common person, Derrick. You know what I mean? Like you're not in academia with it, is what I mean. For people who don't know, I come from, I work at a university. I come from that background. Is superlative. Like you've really know your facts. You've got a good comprehension of history, and you have a good comprehension of history in the sense of this event caused this event, which caused this event, which got us to where we are today.
The domino theory.
And I don't know, man. I just, for the average MAGA cult person, dude, I think the appeal of Donald Trump on some level, and again, this is a multifaceted problem, so I'm not negating anything that you said at all.
Yeah.
But I think the appeal is he speaks at a fourth grade reading level. Mm-hmm. See, I think we went so far, like Obama, an argument can be made. He may have been the most articulate president maybe ever.
Second. You know who I think number one is? Bill Clinton.
Okay.
Go back and listen to a Bill Clinton speech. He never uses a verbal crutch, ever. Except
that he spoke, I don't want to say this. I don't want to make it sound like Obama was elitist. It's not that at all. But he spoke on a level of logic and articulation that, I don't know, it was extremely impressive. I remember the first time hearing him at the national convention, that first time when he gave that speech, and I just turned to my wife and I texted some friends. I said, he's going to be president. He's going to be awesome.
Yep, that's the same thing I said. When I saw him do that keynote speech, I said, we're looking at a future president here.
And I think I really don't want to be insulting to people. That's really not my heart. I'm just trying to state an observation based on what I think is true. And I could be wrong. But I think for people who couldn't keep up with that, it was frustrating. It was, I don't even know. I mean, the race.
No, you're on it. You're on it. You are on it.
And then here comes Donald Trump, who speaks at a third or fourth grade reading level, legitimately. Mm-hmm. And he's an outsider to the system. And I honestly don't believe there is any application of deeper critical thinking in most people who feel inspired when they listen to a Donald Trump speech. And I know that's going to piss some people. I've got some friends, if they watch this, they're going to be pissed. And I'm not talking about you guys because some of you are very smart, but I'm just watching the movement as a whole. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking about people that I knew and interacted with. Mm-hmm. He speaks your language. Obama didn't speak your language at all.
Right.
He speaks your language. And he articulates your grievances. And you love him for it. You absolutely love him for it.
But you want to know something funny? That there are a lot of black folks that Obama didn't resonate with for that very reason.
Interesting.
Because it's like a lot of black folks will call Obama that sedity Negro. Highfalutin, on his high horse kind of thing. And so I think that there was a backlash, not just a racial backlash, but I think it was an anti-intellectual.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. That's exactly articulates what I'm trying to say.
And so and to be fair, to give Trump a little credit, he speaks. You said he speaks at a fourth grade level, but let's just say, given the benefit of the doubt, that maybe that's not where he actually lives. Let's just say that, but that's where he speaks because he knows that's where his audience is.
Right.
And that again is politics. Is like, what you said was so super important, that politics, if you look at it etymologically, politics and policy are closely related.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is the expression or manifestation of policy,
mm-hmm.
right? Or how we utilize rhetoric to shape policy. Now, with that being said, when you take away the policy from politics, basically all you have is hollow rhetoric. You have words without substance. Mm-hmm. And that's what and so again, what Trump is doing, and again, I'm going to give him a lot of credit here, maybe more than he deserves, is that he knows how to pull the strings of his audience. There's an old saying, old hillbilly saying, where you get played like a fiddle. And Trump knows how to do that.
He does.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if he went down to Georgia to do fiddle battle with the devil, the devil would have lost his fiddle.
Oh, yeah. Trump would have been playing it.
Trump would have been playing it.
But I do think, let me give you an example. I know people who are strong Trump supporters who their kids' medical bills are taken care of by Medicaid.
Yep.
Half their grocery bill is on their step card.
Yep.
And some of them are either on SSI themselves or disability or some form of what they would call entitlements, right?
Yep.
And they will sit there and go on a rant about, we can't raise taxes on the rich because that's stealing, that's taking money, or we can't pay off student loans because that's stealing from people to pay off this. Or they'll even say these people just don't want to work and money's being stolen from rich people to pay for them. And I can't do it because I don't want to, I just don't need the drama right now in my life. But I want to just say, didn't you just tell me that you're on Medicaid? Didn't your wife just go pay a $600 grocery bill with her step card? And what? But so that's what I'm talking about. Like, there is just not, like what I was saying with you, it's just, and you're an exceptional person, but I'm saying for what I encounter on a daily basis, there is no connecting the dots. There is no, it's all emotion and just parroting whatever they've heard on whatever they've consumed.
I was having this discussion right before the show started with my sons, with Ducey and Anthony. And so Ducey was saying, okay, if I'm, because Ducey's making good money these days. And he said, well, if I'm making this amount of money and per check, and if I vote for Biden, he's going to take $600 out of my $2,000 check. But, Trump is only going to take $400. I'm going to vote for Trump. Right. And I said, that's great, except that's not the way it works. I said, at the level of money that you make, that's, you're going to wind up paying more. Now, I said, where I live income wise, I benefited from the Trump policies. Mm-hmm. I got a tax cut because I'm a high earner. But here's the flip side too, is that when we talk about self-interest, we have to talk about our self-interest in the context of our fellows.
Right.
So the thing is, I'm not going to want to benefit at the expense of others. So if me getting a tax cut means someone who makes less than me pays more, then I'm willing to hold the line on my taxes, because these people that are making less, they need the help. They really need the help.
Right.
And so, you know, we talk about income taxes, and so you hear about things like fair tax and flat tax and all of this other stuff. And they say, well, you know, we'll just make tax rates even across the board. Well, it doesn't really work. And I used to believe that as a former Republican, I used to be a big proponent of flat tax because I said everybody just pays the same, except, you know, 10% for someone making $30,000 a year is a lot more extreme than someone who's making, you know, $1 billion a year and paying 10%. Now, yeah, granted, the person who's making $1 billion is paying way more taxes at 10%, but it impacts the person at the 30,000 level more. And so we need to start looking at like, this is the problem with politics, is that America has this ideal of rugged individualism.
Uh-huh.
And that, you know, the survival of the fittest, and who pulls himself up by his bootstraps is the one that's going to survive, and all of that. And I just don't see that anymore. There is no rugged individualism. There's a greater collectivism that needs to be considered, right? In other words, yeah, okay, I make more, but because I make more, I can pay more, and I can contribute more. I can be, you know, if I'm looking at, you know, relative to my income, being a productive, contributing member of society, I'm okay with that. You know, I don't necessarily need to have my taxes lowered. And then the other thing too is that historically, tax cuts have never, ever, ever in this country helped the lower to middle classes. Never. It's always benefited the wealthiest. And so what happens is that as we reduce taxes at the higher income level, what we're seeing now is the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the country. And instead of the trickle down that Republicans like to tout,
yeah, right,
we're seeing wealth not even trickling. It's actually flooding uphill.
It is flooding uphill.
Yeah, and so when we talk about politics, we have to say, okay, what is the greater good? Now I'm going to change gears for a second. I'm going to give you one more thing about race, right? Because I had talked about Scandinavian countries, about Denmark and Finland and Sweden and Norway, and how they have these successful social democratic programs where basically they have universal basic income, they have cradle to grave benefits, they have free education all the way up to postgraduate and all this stuff, and they do these things. And I remember, I never forget this because this blew my mind. I think that was like one of my most viral posts on Instagram. I mean, it was like there were like hundreds of thousands of people that commented on it, and millions of people that had saw it. Right, it was the most viral post that I had. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of these people were saying was these countries have these programs successfully implemented because they're racially homogenous.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they said the quiet part out loud.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we can't have these things, can't do these things here in America because we have too many ethnicities. And what that says, you know, when people say America's not a racist country, it absolutely is. Mm-hmm. You know, does that mean that most of the people in America are racist? No, but our policies, our politics are absolutely, our economics are absolutely racist. Because when we start talking about, well, the reason why we can't have universal health care is because we're not racially homogenous. Come on, man.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and absolutely 100% true. The class structure in America and trickle-down economics is really frustrating to me. But let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Because these issues are usually multifaceted. How much do you think these European countries are also able to make socialism work on the level that they do because they're not a superpower that has to build up their military? Because it bugs the shit out of me that all this money goes into the military industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying not to be offensive, but we're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, and I understand they're not actually getting it. It's the companies that are building the weapons that are getting the actual money, and then they're getting the weapons.
$20 billion of aid has gone to Ukraine.
Yeah, so Finland's not doing that, Sweden's not doing that, Denmark's not doing that. That whatever they're collecting from their citizens is going back into the benefit of the country and the benefit of the citizens.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering how much that dynamic also comes into play when we talk about what a socialistic system would look like in America. I mean, we do corporate socialism too. We bail out companies, give CEOs golden parachutes, all the time.
Yep.
And then your average voter, who again doesn't think on this level, doesn't think through these issues, keeps voting for their own impoverishment. Frankly,
they vote against their own self-interest.
They vote against their own self-interest all the time, enthusiastically, going to the poll, campaigning, knocking on doors.
I forget who said this, but this is like one of the greatest quotes I ever heard. It said that most poor Americans don't see themselves as poor. They see themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires. So they're always, cucking for the rich, right? And the thing is, at some point you have to realize that, dude, no matter how hard you work, no matter what advantages you get, no matter what opportunities you get, you're never going to be rich. Never, ever, 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 right? You could think you're going to be Jeff Bezos, you're not. You can think you're going to be Bill Gates, you're not. You can think you're going to be Larry Ellison. You can even think you could be Oprah or Michael Jordan. You're not. You're just not. Not everybody. There's a reason why mountains are narrower at the top than at the base.
Good analogy.
So it's like there's only so much room at the top. Everybody is not going to be there, but the thing is that if you look at a mountain, right, that mountains are the peak of the mountain is, the base of the mountain is just as important as the peak, right? And I learned something within the last year that mountains actually have roots. They have roots like trees. And that like Mount Everest, they say Mount Everest may be larger beneath sea level than it is going above sea level, and that's amazing. But the point is that that all of that infrastructure of the mountain is important. So yeah, you're going to have peaks, you're going to have bases, you're going to have roots. And what we have to realize is that every part of the mountain is important to the being of the mountain, right? And so all of us, we need to look at politics from a more holistic perspective. And that's the problem with America, is that we don't look at it in a holistic perspective. We look at it, first of all, we're like, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? And like I was explaining to Ducey, it's like, okay, you're making 60 grand a year, but like, you're not going to get a tax cut, dude. I make 300 grand, I'll get a tax cut, right? And that's the difference. And so the thing is that, first of all, that people like Ducey, they have to see, okay, I'm not getting any benefit from these tax cuts. I'm not getting there. There aren't any more jobs created. There aren't any more goods being produced. Nothing else is coming from the lower taxes except the net worth of the wealthiest people go up. Right. But when you lower the taxes on the people who are at the lower end of the spectrum, they're going to take this money and they're going to, okay, I'm going to buy some shrimp, some frozen shrimp with the groceries next week. And what does that do? That fattens up the bottom line for Walmart and it helps the shrimp catchers and all of that. And that actually does trickle up or trickle down or whatever.
Yeah. Bottom up.
But the thing is, what we have to do, I think that there needs to be, and we talk about this all the time on the show. We talk about critical thinking and the importance of critical thinking. And I think that because we're not applying a lot of critical thinking to politics, we are largely voting based on A, the cult of personality, and B, our emotions, right?
Yeah.
And we need to get away from that and start saying, okay, what does this mean to, first of all, to me? Yes, you do have to consider your own self-interest, right? Nothing wrong with that. But you have to look at your own self-interest in the context of how does this affect everyone else? Because if I'm getting a break, like let's say you say like poor people, let's say a family of four that makes less than $25,000 a year, I would say that's considered to be poor, right? And you say, okay, these people just are not going to pay taxes at all. Well, what will happen is that the middle class is going to, I can't believe that you're giving these poor people a break, but they're working poor, and that's the other thing too. If we're gonna have a truly egalitarian society, then we have to dispense of this notion of the working poor. As either you work or you're poor, right? But you shouldn't be working and struggling in poverty at the same time. That a wealthy, benevolent, and strong society like ours, that shouldn't be the case. Now, one thing that you did touch, you talked about the military, right? The United States needs to stop being the fucking police for the rest of the world. Bring our troops home. We could shutter a lot of the bases around the world. Do we need to be in Europe? No. Do we need to be in the Far East? No. Do we need to be in India or Africa? Do we need to be any of these places? No. If we say, okay, we're gonna bring our military home, we're gonna use our military to protect our borders, period, full stop. Right? Because that's what a military is for. And to deal with an invading horde if that happens. So to say that we're going to send people over and we're going to fight for democracy all over the world. Listen, if Iraq doesn't want democracy, fuck it. Let them have what they want. If they want a constitutional monarchy, great. If they want to have fascism, great. Whatever they want. If that's what they want, let the people of other nations choose what they want to do. We shouldn't be in the habit of picking winners and losers, and I'll say this because people talk about when you talk about like socialism or communism, and they say, well, look at Cuba and look at Venezuela, and they're shitty countries. You know why they're shitty countries, guys? Because the United States doesn't allow people to trade with them. Doesn't allow people to do business with them. And if you're embargoed like that, you're isolated, you can't trade, you can't buy, you can't sell. And yes, your country is going to suffer. But to the credit of Venezuela and Cuba, they continue to take care of their people, even though they don't have the means. Whereas we have the means, and we're like, fuck the poor. That's where we are. Or I believe that we could probably solve the whole homeless situation in a year if we say, okay, we're going to throw some resources to this, and we're going to throw some great minds at this, and we're going to work until we get a solution, and we're going to get people off the streets and get them into homes and get them get them the psychological or the addiction help that they need or whatever. We're going to take care of this. But instead, we're like, well, Jesus said, the poor you will have with you always.
Yeah. We didn't even touch on the religious angle of American politics. I guess we talk about that a lot, but
yeah. But that's let's touch that for just a second, because let me just say this for our audience, is that my blog post on Pathos last week dealt with why third parties can't win elections, and that's a very simple thing. You can read the whole article. The article is great. I say that because I wrote it. But third parties don't win because they don't participate in local elections. And Tip O'Neill, former Speaker of the House, he said it most eloquently. He said all politics is local. So if you're not participating in local politics, you're not going to win general elections. And that the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, insert your favorite third party here. So basically, if you're voting for a third party, essentially you're throwing your vote away. Sorry, but not sorry.
Yeah.
But the religious part of it, now my my blog post for next week is going to be why Christianity is hypocritical for supporting Donald Trump. Because, you know, if you look at the 7 deadly sins, what are the 7 deadly sins? You know, like sloth, greed, laziness, you know, whatever those 7 days, basically Trump and pride. Yeah. Trump embodies all of those.
Oh yeah, all of them, every single one of them.
Every single one. And yet the religious people say, oh, well, he's God's man and he's Cyrus and, you know, personified. And they say, well, Jesus was this is a billboard. This is an actual billboard that somebody's put up. They said Jesus was a convicted felon too. I love that incredulous look on your face, man.
Yeah, I think a good part 2 discussion down the road would be we have to stop looking for deliverance from the outside. And I think that's the problem with Trump. He's the Messiah. He's going to fix things. He's going to burn this corrupt system to the ground, and there's going to emerge this new utopia in America. At the end of the day, no. So we got to figure out what we need to do in order to be prosperous and peaceful and successful independently of our 2-party system.
Well, I think that first of all,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but for all the liberals out there, all you liberals that are watching right now, you know, that if you want to see your liberal, socialist, communist ideas come to pass, you're going to have to vote Democrat for the foreseeable future. You're gonna have to vote Democrat and put pressure on the Democrats to push things to the left. That's what's going to have to happen. And then you Republicans, well, if you want a constitutional monarchy or a straight dictatorship, keep voting for people like Trump. You're going to get there. I promise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but here's the thing that you know, people always complain about what they get, and they complain more when they get what they want.
That'll preach.
Yep. And that's where we are. It's like, you know, you keep saying Trump, and Trump is the Messiah. He's Cyrus. He's God's man. He's going to do this. He's going to drain the swamp. He's going to, you know, rid the world of child molesters and pornographers and all of this other stuff. And you know, and eventually, you know, if you keep banging that drum, you're going to get that guy. But when you get that guy, that guy's not going to care at all about what you think about anything.
Yep, for sure. 100%. All right. Well, you got anything else to say, Derrick?
No, man, I've said pretty much all that I can say. But I'll just say in closing that keep your eyes on this channel, because our book is coming soon. It's coming soon, and it's going to be fire. Yeah. So make sure you watch this space.
Yep. And the title of that book is going to be Growing in Real Time. So hopefully we contributed something to your thinking, your lives, that will help you, make you think. Hopefully it didn't piss you off too much, because this is one of those topics, but that's part of the problem again in American politics. We can't talk about this stuff, and you can't fix something that you can't talk about across the aisle. So anyway, good to see you, Derrick. Thanks.
Good to see you, Aaron.
And peace and hair grease. Blast from the past.
Hey, thanks for coming to our TED Talk and growing in real time with us. Love y'all.